Welcome to day 24 of our Halloween countdown, our ghost host countdown of movies that feature horror hosts in the cast. Yesterday we looked at Asylum of Satan from director William Girdler that had not one but two horror hosts in there, including the Fearmonger, which was their faceless, their floating-faced horror host in the Louisville, Kentucky area. One of the more interesting horror hosts out there for sure. All right. Tonight, we're going to look at another independent film and another really strong horror host connection in this one. That is Nightmare in Blood. The first annual San Francisco Horror Convention is being held at the historic Plaza Theater, and the Planning Commission has gathered to put together the latest details of the event. The guest of honor is an actor named Malachi, played by Jerry Walter, who is considered one of the greats, famous for starring in a series of vampire films. He is also famous for living the role of the vampire at all times, so much so that he forbids crosses on set and insists that a real coffin is kept on stage for him. He has a pair of PR men that work for him named Harris and Beebe. It turns out that Malachi is, of course, a real vampire, and his PR men are actually the famed grave robbers Burke and Hare, reanimated to do Malachi's bidding. They begin killing people, draining them of blood and removing their vital organs to feed their master and for use in a formula for their own continued existence. They play a game of darts with a cleaver to determine their next victim, chosen at random from photos tacked on a board. This film was co-written, produced, and directed by John Stanley. Now, Stanley was a writer and film critic and longtime fan of horror and sci-fi genres. He was also the TV horror movie host of Creature Features in the San Francisco Bay Area, where he hosted under his real name. He took over the reins of the show from former host Bob Wilkins in 1979, 1 year after the release of this film. Stanley had been a guest on Creature Features several times and even gave former host Wilkins a cameo part as a member of the protest crowd at the beginning of this film, as well as himself as a customer in a comic book shop. Stanley continued the Wilkins tradition of hosting films out of costume, appearing as himself on camera. He also continued the tradition of bringing guests onto the program, entertaining many genre greats. He hosted the show from 1979 to 1984 on KTVU Channel 2. Nightmare in Blood is a true fanboy's delight. It is packed full of references to horror movies, actors, and there's memorabilia all over this thing. The walls are plastered with classic horror posters, and a local comic book store plays a significant role in the plot. It was shot on 35mm film and has a classic 70s look and feel to it. Interestingly, there is even a segment of the film that was shot on the Creature Features set. Nightmare in Blood was shot over the course of 5 years and premiered in 1977. At that time, Creature Features was still hosted by Bob Wilkins. In the film, the set is part of a fictional show called Fright Flicks. Its host, George Wilson, played by Morgan Upton, brings on two guests to debate the merits of horror movies. This is a very meta moment. A fictional horror host named George Wilson shooting a segment on a real horror host set for a movie that is directed by another future horror host. Nightmare in Blood's another of these regional films. I love that it was co-written, produced, and directed by Stanley. This is a true labor of love for him. He's showing his love to the genre. Shot on another horror host's set. I love that. He actually wasn't the host of Creature Features at the time that he made this, but he went on to become the horror host of Creature Features, which is neat. He would take over after Bob Wilkins. So Stanley's one of the greats. He's a good one. Really like his work. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people get him and Bob Wilkins mixed up. Stanley himself in episodes had said before, a lot of people mix us up. You know, that's not me. That was the other guy. The guy with the cigar. Yeah, that's him. I'm the other guy. But they both hosted the film. They both hosted in the real, under the real names in there as themselves. So not playing characters, which set an archetype for horror hosts moving forward. All right, I'm gonna give Nightmare in Blood 3 skulls. It is a neat independent film. I really like it. I'd like to show this one on the big screen. I'd like to see it shown on the big screen. That would be a lot of fun. So Nightmare in Blood, check it out. It's right here on YouTube, and you can see the current Creature Features folks hosting this movie here on YouTube. So check that out. Till tomorrow night, Dr. Gangrene here from the lab saying, stay mad.
To my legions of fans, I must apologize. But I felt it was absolutely necessary to appear here tonight.